The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome to the Marketing with Purpose, a segment of the Bliss Business Podcast where we explore what it really takes for marketing leaders to create impact that goes beyond the numbers. I'm Tullio, and in each episode, we sit down with marketing experts to explore their leadership approach and strategies that drive performance and resonate with their audience. Together, we'll dive into what's working, what's not, and how purpose and empathy can transform the way brands connect with people. All right, so let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Gareth Bain. He's the Fractional CMO and founder of Got Legs Digital Marketing. Gareth is an award-winning growth strategist with over 17 years of experience helping founder-led businesses scale. But what truly sets him apart is his belief that marketing should do more than drive revenue. It should create real human impact. Having led initiatives for global brands like American Express, Lego, Blackstone, and MoneyGram, Gareth brings a rare blend of strategic discipline and empathy to his work. Through his purpose-led consultancy, he has helped contribute to the donation of more than 500 prosthetic legs to amputee survivors across Africa, reflecting his philosophy that growth should move people and change lives. We're going to explore bringing purpose and empathy into marketing. And I'm excited to dive into this and talk about purpose, storytelling, and strategy that can come together to build brands that truly matter. Welcome to the podcast. Looking forward to our conversation, Gareth.
Thanks very much to you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, Gareth, before we dive in, I'd love to hear why was bringing purpose and empathy into marketing the topic you chose to explore with us today? And what makes this so important right now?
So I think it's quite interesting when you bring purpose into a business. What I wanted to do on this show was kind of just show people that bringing purpose in allows you to disrupt the industry, allows you to potentially create a movement, and also allows you to stand out in a very noisy crowd. And I've kind of done that in a way where, again, as we mentioned in the intro, I started a business called Got Legs Digital, which was purpose at heart, I'd really say. Half of it was commercially led. We help businesses to get legs and grow. That's got legs. But then also there's the philanthropic side of things. Got legs. Helping someone get legs was something that I really wanted to do. And I really wanted to start this ethical agency that was purpose before profit. So when we set it up, we kind of had that in mind. So it's very much in the ethos of the business. So that's why I like talking about things like this. And I like showing businesses how you can build purpose into your own businesses. And it helps you attract the right clients, attract and keep the right staff. And then also allows you to have a different conversation than clicks and links and revenue and things like that. It's all the impact that the lives are that you're having on people's lives. So it's really important that you have that aspect. And what I found out is that it's actually become a pull strategy rather than a push strategy from my side. I now have businesses that want to align with me because of their values. They want to work with me because of the work that we are doing in the communities. And it's a great way of, again, vetting employees. If they're not aligned, we're not going to be a good fit. Also, a great way when you are talking with a client. Are we a good fit? Do they talk about, the purpose that you are doing? Or is it like, what is the ROI on that? What is the KPIs? How much money are you going to make? So it's a good way to kind of gauge who's going to be a good target audience and a fit for your business.
I love it. It's funny how when you focus on being purposeful, you find your tribe and your community, and they've been waiting for you. You don't even have to go sell anything. You just connect it together. It's amazing. And studies have shown that it's very effective strategy too for growth. So congratulations.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things with the starting the movement, and this is something I just wanted to discuss, If a business just gave 1% of their EBITDA, let's say $1 million, in revenue, they gave 1%, that's 10,000. I did some research this morning. There's 60,000 digital marketing agencies in the USA. If that 10,000 was donated by the 60,000, that'd be 600 million. If we could just get marketing agencies to be more ethical, more purpose-driven, that's a movement.
Yeah.
What are we doing with that money?
Yeah, there's really no reason for any of the problems that exist, poverty, et cetera. And I think the commercial sector can do a lot. So I agree with you 100%. Let's dig in a little bit in terms of strategy and growth, because CMOs are often pulled between near-term campaign results and long-term brand building. You can be purposeful, but then when it comes down to it, of course, you've got clients, they want results, right? And it's always that balance between near-term, give me something right now, and then making sure that you're building for the long term too. How do you ensure your marketing strategies for your clients, for example, stay aligned with the company's growth goals? And where do you find the biggest friction points in making that happen?
I'd say the most important thing and the biggest challenge that CMOs face is kind of that balance. You're brought into a business and the CEO or the founder wants results quickly. So you need that short-term revenue, but also he hasn't brought you in there for that knee-jerk reaction. He's brought you in there to build a business. So aligning with a good strategy helps to build that roadway or that runway for about 2 years, I would say, is a good path. But then breaking it down into actionable steps, quarterly objectives and things. So it's more measurable so that you can take that back to a CEO and show him that this is what we're doing in the short term. Does it align with your goals? But this is where we're going to in terms of a roadmap, and kind of what I look for in doing that is you buy in the whole team. The team sees the strategy. The team adds to the strategy. That helps to reduce a lot of the friction. Because sometimes, again, we work in silos and marketing wants to go off and do something, but doesn't tell sales or doesn't tell support or product doesn't know. And then next minute you've got, a big problem on your hands. Again, an example that I can use is a client that I work for. And they brought us in to do a very short-term piece of work. They needed to take their subscribers. They were an ed tech business. They needed us to take their subscribers from a freemium to a paid subscription. And it was my responsibility to help do that. And we needed to do that in a short period of time. But the broader team were working on goals that were related to content, related to building libraries, assets, UX, UI, website, that I had to work with them on because they were building the bigger picture of where we wanted to go in the future. But I needed short-term time from them to get things. So to avoid any friction, I brought them in early and go, this is the plan, this is where I'm going. How much time can we schedule, weekly catch-ups to keep ourselves in the loop to help align the business with that central revenue goal, but also keep you working in that long-term approach. So I found that works really well. And again, from my side, I do like to have a kind of a Scrum agile methodology to my approach.
Nice.
So it's kind of like the, high impact, low investment. Let's get those out the way first. High time, low investment. Let's put that later on in the strategy.
I love it. Now, you said earlier you started your business with this idea of putting purpose before profits, and I think a lot of people love to go down that path. But then there's the big question of, okay, we're in a crisis or there's a market downturn. So when the stakes are high, like a crisis or a market downturn, how do you go about maintaining a sense of purpose and empathy while making quick strategic decisions that keep the business lights on, so to speak, as well?
Yeah, I think I can talk to that quite in my personal experience now. I'm based in Dubai, which is kind of the almost the epicenter at the moment with the war between Iran and the USA. We have missiles and drones coming over at the moment. The borders were closed for some periods of time, and business is kind of halted. And everyone's taking a wait and see approach. tourism has dropped. People have stopped hiring new hires, and everyone's just kind of had this put the brakes on. And as a community, what we're doing here in the business sector is saying that's probably the worst thing to do. You need to keep going out there. You need to keep leading. You need to connect with people because we're human at the end of the day. So having that human connection, maybe they're not going to buy your product, but if you can be out there and you can be helping them in any way and connecting with them and building a relationship, that's extremely powerful. Or if you can go out there and show just how we're all getting through this together from a mental standpoint, is really important. So that connectivity, that human touch, that empathy goes a long way. In just, as I said, they might not be able to afford your product now or use you now, but they will remember you. There was a great example during COVID where there was a fitness instructor in the UK named Joe Wicks, and he was obviously a personal trainer, and we're all locked indoors, and we couldn't go out. So what did he do? He formed a YouTube channel and created exercises, and he was able to get onto TV and radio, and he called it Lean in 15. And everyone tuned in every morning at 8 o'clock to get lean in 15 minutes. He wasn't making sales from it, but it united the country, and everyone was getting lean in 15. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to have a human approach to something when there's a market downturn.
I love that. And I think that's the beauty of being purpose-driven too, is that you don't think of people as customers. You're just thinking about enabling a community, and you serve that community no matter what. And that'll pay off later, even if it doesn't immediately. So what a great share you've given us. Really, really resonated. Let's talk a little bit about how you go about go-to-market execution, especially in cross teams. When you're launching, for example, a new product or entering a new market, whether it's yourself or with a client, what's been your most effective way to align sales, product, customer success teams? Because that's often a challenge, right? And where does that alignment usually break down?
Yes, it's always an interesting conversation because everyone's got their own hats and their own direction where they're going. And I see a fractional CMO as the one who kind of brings everyone together. I often call myself the conductor of the orchestra, pulling everyone together. And again, I think it's about having that clear revenue goal. We have that strategy, and then we align with product, we align with sales, we align with customer service, finance and tech as well. And it's allowing people to kind of add to that strategy. It's not something that I've put together, but it's a living, working document where we're all kind of working together towards it and taking ownership. Because that's the most important thing. If I've come there and dictated to someone that this is what we're going to do and stuff, you are met with resistance. Whereas if you can get them to buy in from the very beginning and you see the end goal, you see what happens. I mean, marketing is really only responsible for the acquisition. Product does the user experience and the core values. Customer service handles retention and staff complaints. And then obviously sales is revenue. So everyone plays in a very important piece in this go-to-market strategy, but we all need to be aligned and working together. A really good example, I was working with a Norwegian client in the AI tech space, and they wanted to launch a pilot project in 3 different countries. And one of those countries was Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is an Arab country, and they write and read from right to left, not left to right. Now, if we hadn't brought tech involved and customer support and all these people involved in the very beginning, we would have had an app that was only left to right. And probably like halfway through, we would have realized we need to make a change here. But because we brought them in, we were allowed, tech were able to sort out bugs, customer service were able to get trained up. We had everyone aligned, which made a successful pilot launch across, the 3 countries that we went into. And we had a 30x, industry benchmark on the campaign that we launched with our referral teams. And off the back of that, we ended up getting over 100 million in terms of investment from a variety of investors all over the world because it was done right.
Amazing. So let's shift a little bit about customer insights, how you've used those. I'm mostly curious about maybe share a time where customer feedback or behavior data or a combination of those two completely shifted your campaign direction and what that taught you about balancing intuition with analytics. Because that's a lot of CEOs like, I want a data-driven marketer, but sometimes you need the insights beyond the data. Tell us a little bit, maybe you heard a story from a customer that changed your approach to the market. I'm curious what you've learned from that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I believe in data. I use data to make decisions. If we're not making data decisions, then we're just guessing. But I always say that, intuition is where it starts. This is what we think. This is our best hypothesis. And then data validates. And then from there, we go into, testing, and relearning. And an example, when I've done this with a client before, is they were a health tech business in the US. They wanted to launch, but they were very much bootstrapped. So we created an MVP product, and I worked with them in the market research section before launch. And what we did is we had our intuition. We thought this was the best thing that we wanted to go to market with. But before we launched, we went and did market research, user testers, and got their feedback. And it was amazing watching people using the app, recording the sessions, having them talk to us. This was confusing. I didn't understand that. The price was too expensive. I wouldn't pay that. That was valuable insight that we actually used to influence the business before we launched. So taking customer feedback right from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and implementing that before we started spending money on advertising. And then when we went to market with a very much a freemium. You guys are our beta testers. We want you in, and we want to build an app and a product that is right for you. So work with us. We're going to give you premium access, but we need you to feedback to us. What do you want in it? What doesn't work? What do you like? And again, that just gave us so many insights as people used it for longer periods of time. And it was really, I think, probably one of the most successful and more exciting launches that I've done in my career so far.
I love it. I think not enough brands do enough listening and hearing what customers have to say. We had recently on this podcast someone who was an undercover boss on that television show 3 times.
All right.
And one thing I love about that show is you got these CEOs who go and speak to the customers or in the front line, understanding what really goes on, and then are able to, in some cases, reshift or redirect or adjust their business because they're more aligned with what's actually going on in real life, not some feedback from some consultant or analyst or, Wall Street. So I love that. Getting closer to the voices that are buying the product is the key. Now let's talk about turning marketing into a revenue engine, because at the end of the day, as marketers, that's what we're getting hired to do. Show me the money, right? So what works best for turning marketing into revenue driver at either the companies you serve or for yourself? And where do you see gaps, like in CRM or lead tracking or sales alignment, that make it harder to measure success? For example, we all have often seen great demand generation, then the handoff sort of falls off and sales doesn't either follow up enough. And then there's this blame game that happens. I'm just curious, what have you seen that makes it harder sometimes to measure the impact of marketing? Marketing might be doing their job, but then it falls somewhere else. So I'm just curious, what's been your experience there?
Yeah, I think it's, I probably repeated a few times. It's just aligning. Marketing, we are measured on, results and, volume. We need to get X amount of leads. But sale is measured on quality. How many deals did we close? So it's kind of like working with the two of them to be like, how do we build in that metric where we pre-qualify, where your MQLs come in, your SQLs, and then there's the close. So creating those sections of validation, I think is important. What we do a lot of in our business is we try and build, I call it a marketing automation engine, which is the heart of the business. And we try and install that into a business. One, because it gives you, a great business valuation. It increases your value. If you know what your number is, you can, your investment value goes up. But it also makes it very clear on where your problems lie. If you have an engine and you're not getting enough quality leads, then you know that you need to move top of funnel. If your leads are kind of coming in and they're not converting, then we need to kind of go middle of funnel and kind of how do we kind of get those marketing assets right. So there's a whole mixture of things that kind of work into this marketing machine. But again, there's a variety of things that I like to do. So one of the things that I built into the business is try to make it hard for a business to say no to you when they're buying your product. So you have a kind of a low entry price, a mid entry price, a high level entry price, where they're at long-term commitment, small-term commitment. An example you could use is the restaurants. Whenever you go and sit down and you're ordering a bottle of wine, you always see the most expensive bottle of wine, and you see the mediums, the kind of average range, and then you get the cheap. And depending on the situation, you decide, well, is it an expensive bottle of wine time? Or, am I on a date? Am I trying to win business? Do I use the expensive? Or am I just having an afternoon lunch by myself and I'll just use the house? So you try to create buckets and opportunities for people to be like, what's the right fit for me now? Again, I always joke and make the assumption of the pirate strategy, the R strategy, which is the acquisitions, activations, retentions, referrals, and then revenue. So again, building that into the marketing strategy is really important. And again, it's memorable, the R side of things.
I love that. I'm going to put it on my next deck, the R effect. I love it. All right. Now, let's talk about building high-performance teams. What's your approach to developing marketing talent so that not only do they hit performance goals, but stay engaged, inspired? And where do you see leaders struggling most in retaining top talent these days?
I think when you're building a purpose-led business, that is a big draw. An example here was one of the team members who worked with us said that I've joined your business after the research that I've done on the business because you are purpose-led. And I have an uncle who has a prosthetic leg and lost his leg through diabetes. So for him, it was a personal connection and wanted to work with us. He also, again, he found out we don't say things KPIs. We have something called KMIs, which is your key moments of impact. So that's kind of how we leave that. So within the business, everyone has their KMIs. What's your key moment of impact? And that could be, we've worked with a client for 3 months, and over that 3 months, we were able to give them a leg. They've now gone on to university, and they've now found a job. That is a moment of impact. Yes, we've got the KPIs, and the client has made hundreds of millions, and they have the sales and this and that, but the impact that we've made is long lasting. And we close them.
School's in session today. R and KMI. I'm taking notes. I am definitely taking notes, Gareth. I love it. All right. So let's final question. Let's talk about the role of empathy and purpose. And speaking of impact, because this is a question we ask all of our CMO guests on the show. How do purpose and empathy shape the way you approach marketing today? And can you share a personal story where your work had a meaningful impact on a customer or an employee?
Yeah. I've got a really great, exciting story. I'll probably just finish on that. But when I lived in South Africa, there was something called the Nelson Mandela Day. And that's celebrated on his birthday. And every year you spend 67 minutes of your time doing a charitable deed. The CEO at the time said, we need to do something. We had no plan. I came up with an approach where why don't we go to the surrounding schools of a disadvantaged community and take 67 learners out of that school and take them to Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was jailed, for the terrorist bombings that he did in South Africa. So we took 67 students out, and how we did that was we got them to write a letter about what Nelson Mandela had done for them and the country in ending apartheid. We took them to the island. They spent the night in the jail cell, in the bunk beds, with the wardens.
Wow.
I mean, there's experiences that you can't have, because you're not actually allowed to do that. They only have that facility there for when the waters are too choppy and you can't actually travel back. So we had 67 kids in bunk beds in a jail cell on Robben Island. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And we invited journalists, we invited the media, the press, again, TV people, and they all reported on that. And by the time that it had gone out, all the newspapers were running the story. We were on TV, we were in the radio. This initiative ended up being the 7th best initiative in the entire country, based on a purpose-driven idea and the outcome of how that led, and then the exposure that you can deal from that.
Wow. I think instead of compulsory like military service, I think when you reach a certain age, you should spend like a week in prison to give you a taste of what happens if you break the rules. That's amazing. I love that story. Well, Gareth, thank you for joining us on the Marketing with Purpose series podcast. Really appreciate you being here with us today.
Yeah, it's only been a pleasure. I love talking about this. So thanks for having me.
Pleasure. I hope today's conversation sparked some new ideas. We learned about R and M and KMIs, and perhaps you've learned a few other things on how you can align strategy, execution, and purpose in your own work. If you found value in this discussion, please like, subscribe, and share it to keep the conversation going. And remember, great marketing doesn't just sell, it serves. See you next time.